Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a comparison between the iPhone 15 Pro Max's 5x lens compared to a real camera setup, the Nikon Z9, with a 70-200 2.8, but locked off at 120 millimeters. Now, the reason we're locking it off at 120 millimeters is the 5x lens in the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a 120 millimeter equivalent. So the idea behind this video is, can we put these images side by side and see if we can tell a difference? Is it going to be good enough? Because Apple is saying that you could use the 5x lens to shoot youth sports or to shoot any type of sports, and that's why I took it out to some baseball games to see how well I could do. Now, if you're looking for a full review of the cameras in the 15 Pro, this isn't it. This is just to focus in on that new lens, the 5x lens, and see if you can see the differences between a $1,500 phone and a $10,000 setup. So we're gonna jump into the computer right here because I will show you some side-by-side examples, but there's some house cleaning I wanna get out of the way first. Now, this image right here was taken with the 5x lens and I shot it in RAW. Now, the reason I shot RAW is like, look, I'm the I shoot RAW guy, and that's how you're gonna get the best quality out of a shot. But I realized right away that if you shoot RAW, you do not get that portrait data that Apple says that you get when you take a picture. It's saying that when you take a picture, you can then go back after the fact, even if you weren't in the portrait mode, and still have that portrait data. But that's not the case when you shoot RAW. If you shoot RAW, you lose out on that data, and I'm not able to go back into this image and change the bokeh or the background focus after the fact. Now let's move on to the next image. Now I'm not shooting RAW because I know that in order to get the portrait data, I need that little F to show up on the screen. And when it shows up and it's gray, that means you're getting the portrait data. The image is going to be saved with all of that, and you can change it after the fact. And if you hit it and it turns yellow, that means you're getting a live preview of what that f-stop would look like. But when I took this picture, you see that it all disappeared. The F wasn't there. So I wasn't able to lock that in. Even though it was on the player's head, it didn't lock it in, so I didn't have the ability to go in after the fact and isolate just the subject. So if you're using the iPhone, you want to make sure that that F shows up. If that F doesn't show up, you're not getting that data. But I finally got it right, and on the next shot, you can see I was able to create that background blur. Now, what I did do, I edited on the iPhone in Lightroom Mobile. I also used our presets that work in Lightroom Mobile because that helps speed up my workflow and make things look better. Now, in Lightroom, you can't use all of that extra portrait data, so when I was editing the files, I put the f-stop at f2.8 to match what the 70-200 2.8 was doing on the real camera. You can take it down to 1.4, you can turn it off altogether in your editing, but I thought for comparison's sake, one's a 2.8, let's make this other one a 2.8. And one more house cleaning thing that I need to show you before we get to the side-by-side examples is if you do shoot in burst mode, which I actually had to Google how to do burst mode because I rarely ever do the burst mode. You press the shutter and you swipe it over to the left and hold. It's gonna take a sequence of images, and one I did 41 shots. He didn't actually swing in that photo, but what happens is you can go in after the fact and select the image that you want, but you do lose out on that data as well. You can't make the portrait mode work after the fact. So just keep that in mind. If you're gonna take a lot of pictures in the burst mode, you're losing out on that data. All right, now, side by side, how insane is it that I'm able to get this photo with the iPhone right here, and then this photo with the real camera? They are very similar. Now, some of the difference that you notice, and this one is with the Nikon, the foreground elements are softer and out of focus because that's how bokeh works. You get a shallow or a narrow depth of field, and so the foreground's gonna be out and the background's gonna be out. In the photo taken with the iPhone, the foreground isn't taken out. Now, I'm sure with computational photography in the future, it's gonna get better and better and start to make the bokeh better and better in these situations. But honestly, it looks really good. Now, one of the cool things about having all of the portrait data is that I could go from the one subject and I can go out to first base, or I could go to the umpire and then back to the batter. You have the data to do that. Now, what is it really doing? it's basically, in my opinion, taking a high aperture photo and then being like, all right, we're gonna use computational photography and just blur this area versus this area. It's not like the focus is actually shifting, the fake blur is shifting. I don't have a problem with this. Remember that 99.99% of the world that uses cell phones to take pictures, they don't care about much more than picking up a camera or picking up a phone and taking a picture. People like me, I wanna see if I can get the best results out of it, but I'm not going to be upset with someone who just takes pictures with a cell phone and is happy with it, and you shouldn't be upset with them either if you're a purist photographer, because it's all about the enjoyment and the love of capturing images, and Apple's job here is to make it as simple as possible for people to get great results. And if that means using computational photography and doing all the work for people other than pressing the button, then they're going to do it. Now, I will say you can take pictures super fast. It's super responsive now. When you press that shutter, it's almost like you're instantly getting those photos, which is great because it's much better when you're trying to get the timing. Like in that photo right here of the Philly guy, I got the timing perfect. Anticipate, press it, one shot, and you get it popping off the bat. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you our custom Lightroom presets in action on this photo right here. Now keep in mind, I'm in Lightroom, but you can also do this in Lightroom Mobile on your phone. We've got Blue's Clues, we've got C41, Copper Tone, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, which looks incredible on this photo, Thick, Tintype, Wet Hot American Summer, and my all-time favorite from FroPack 1 with one click, we've got Skittles. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow or you want to edit on your mobile device, FroPack 4 is perfect for that. We created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. If you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get Skittles, which is a part of FroPack 1, you can get the Grand Slam bundle, FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, moving on, this is interesting. The fact that these two images are almost identical, 2 pitches apart, is kind of insane. It's almost hard to tell which is which. I mean, this is the real camera, and this is not the real camera. You could tell because look at the blur of the bat, look at the blur of the ball, but look at Bryce Harper here at first base. Here he's jumping in ready position, and the next picture he's in jumping position. He's almost in the same, and so is the guy at first base. The umpire, the only difference is the umpire's playing with his belt in one, and that's it. But this is where the differences happen between a real camera and the cell phone. The shutter speed here is at 1/100th of a second, which is pretty slow when you're trying to capture motion. That's why the ball is blurring, and that's why the bat is blurring. With the real camera, I'm able to shoot at 1/2500th of a second because I can raise the ISO up. Quick camera lesson here. The iPhone's sensor is so small. It's a small sensor. So if you raise the ISO, you're gonna add so much noise and grain and the image isn't going to be usable. With a real camera, or in this case, a full frame sensor camera, the full frame sensor is about this big. You're gathering so much more light. You're also able to raise the ISO up higher and still have a cleaner shot, which then means I can have the 1/2500th of a second shutter speed versus the 1/100th. Apple's still doing a great job. I mean, if you saw the one image and you didn't see the other that was taken with the real camera, quickly you're not gonna be like, oh wow, that wasn't taken with a real camera. You're gonna be like, well, that's actually pretty good. Is it perfect? The answer is no, but for doing that with a cell phone, it's pretty darn good. Now, I'm gonna turn off all the data on the screen. We're gonna put up these two photos, and can you tell me which one is the iPhone and which one is the real camera? So is it the left or is it the right? I'll give you guys a couple of seconds. Leave a comment down below. Is it the left or is it the right, which is the iPhone? In this case, the one on the left was the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the 5X lens. The one on the right was the real camera. This is where it's very difficult to tell the difference. I think it did a fantastic job. That if you were looking at the iPhone photo and you didn't have the other one there, honestly, if you have both of them there, it's still pretty hard to tell. What I did find is that the color of the pants, some of the white balance, some of the color was off ever so slightly. But honestly, if I printed these out on my Canon Pro 1000 printer, I don't think you would know which was which. That's how good this is. Now, the reason for that is when you fill the frame, you're getting much more data. You're getting the subject right there, they're big. That's why when Apple showed you their portrait photos, and just about every photo they show you is a beautifully lit portrait where they fill the frame with the subject, because it just looks better when they do that. This case with the 5X, getting it close, putting the bokeh at 2.8 after the fact, I had a hard time telling you that these images, which one was which. And I think a lot of you guys might have had the same issue. It's pretty insane in this situation. But then you have an image like this where the subject is further away. It's going to be much harder to get a great result with the 5X with a subject super far. I know Apple says that this is going to be great for sports and youth sports and whatever. 120 millimeters isn't really that much. You want to get to 240 millimeters, you want to get to 300 millimeters, you want to start doing that. That's where it's going to be usable for the soccer and for other types of sports. But filling the frame is still key. The more you fill the frame with optical, not digital, as you pinch and zoom, the quality is going to go down. You're not going to get that great of a result. In this case, this one, not so good. Whereas with the real camera at 120 millimeters, obviously it's much cleaner. You have nice separation, the colors, the tones, everything just looks much better. Turning off the data again, because I want you to tell me which one's the iPhone and which one is the real camera. Left or the right? Left or the right? Okay, so the one on the left this time is the iPhone. Again, it's the iPhone. The one on the right is the real camera. And looking at the Liberty Bell in the background, again, both of these are at 2.8. It's very difficult to see any imperfections. I think one of the only imperfections here might be the way that the hand is blurred versus in this one, but his hands are further back in the real camera one. The colors are slightly off, I can tell, with the iPhone one, but honestly, it is really good. All right, one more side by side. Can you tell the difference between the left and the right? So which one's the iPhone this time? Well, the one on the left. I kept it on the left this time. This looks really good. This looks really good. The only imperfections with this is right around the bat. The bokeh is having trouble separating with the bat, but everyday people looking at this are gonna be like, that's insane. Because with the real camera, I'm looking at the background blur, and it is insane how similar they are, and that's great. But again, filling the frame. And the last image from the iPhone I want to show you is Bryce Harper checking his swing here. You can see how the imperfections of cutting him out are not great. I think this one might have back focused originally on the background, and then when you try to bring him back, it's not doing a great job of cutting him out. But if I put this on social media, if I texted this to someone, which I actually texted it to Steven, and he was like, I couldn't tell that this was the iPhone at a glance. And the ball's blurring a little bit because we're at, what are we at here? We're at 1/100th of a second. We're only at 160 ISO. And I know some of you guys may be like, but you didn't shoot in the perfect daylight. Well, no, I didn't. I shot at a stadium because that's what I shot, and it is what it is. Yeah, in better daylight, you're gonna be able to get faster shutter speeds, but this is again where you separate a real camera from the other camera. And again, honestly, it did really good, the cell phone. A lot of those images are difficult to tell which is which. But the reason I bring this up is because Bryce Harper was called out for swinging, and you could tell he didn't swing because you could see from the footage recorded from the camera, he didn't swing. It was a check swing. He starts to go down the line. You can't lock the focus on. I kept tapping the screen to see if I could focus on him. This, you could see the imperfections of the bokeh up in the upper deck and also in the pitcher's hat. So it's not perfect. Then we switch over to the real camera, which I ripped off the tape so I could zoom out to 200 millimeters. And just look how much better, I mean, look how clean these images are. And yeah, you're taking a $10,000 plus setup and you're comparing it to an iPhone, but a real picture at the end of the day is going to still look fantastic. Let me jump in here and say, have you graduated to using a quote-unquote real camera and you're looking to take better pictures in low-light situations? Well, if so, just look for this orange box over on FroKnowsPhoto.com, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I'm gonna send you a free guide to capturing motion in low-light situations. Now, let's get back to the video. So at the end of the day, how is it? I mean, I think it did okay. It wouldn't be my first choice as a professional photographer to grab this in a situation to go shoot sports. Could I get good results? I think the results speak for themselves. Certain ones look fantastic, other ones don't look that great. And when you compare it to a $10,000 setup, of course the $10,000 setup's going to look very good in comparison. But I do think that Apple did a fantastic job with their computational photography, getting the bokeh to look as good as it looked in some of these images. Just keep in mind that if that F isn't showing up in your shot, then you're not going to have all of that depth data. And I think the big question is it worth it to go from the 15 Pro to the 15 Pro Max? If you don't need that 5x lens, and you don't need a bigger battery, I mean, that's up to you. I'm using the bigger phone right now this year. I like the bigger battery, and honestly, I don't see very well. And so having the bigger screen with more text and more real estate is very helpful for me when I'm just using the phone as an everyday phone. So is it worth it? It's up to you to decide whether it's worth it based on this. But Apple has done a great job, again, giving people another tool. Do I think that you can go out and shoot sports all the time with it? The answer is, for most sports that people are shooting, no. But at the end of the day, for most people who just want to take pictures with their phone, not have to think about it, Apple is doing a great job. We know that the cameras are fantastic and they'll continue to get better. But until the sensors get bigger and bigger, which they may not in a phone ever get to the size of a full frame sensor, just because of size limitations, you're not going to be able to sit there and replace a real camera. But most people don't need that, and most people don't want that. So, how do you think it did? What do you think about it? Leave some comments down below. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so you don't miss videos, and give this a thumbs up. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.
3-2 pitch. It's low and in. Ball. Oh, they said he went around. He is out of this game. I gotta tell you, naked eye, he did not swing at that.